Hey everyone, today is July 22nd, 2023, and I'm going to show you around the garden. First off, if it wasn't for buying slug pellets to keep them under control, I would have absolutely nothing now. There are probably tens of thousands of slugs on this property, and if it wasn't for putting up a barrier for them, which is slug pellets, like once a week I have to put those down, garden would be destroyed. I did an experimental garden with all the leftover seeds completely gone. They eat just about everything, it seems like, except potatoes. We got the electric fence going. There's been zero damage this year. When I planted the garden, we had a very hot stretch of weather, had to run the sprinkler daily. Sprinkler timer has been completely off now for the past almost 2 months. It's been raining almost every single day. Not much sunshine, that's why a few of the plants may look a little yellowish, but relief is on the way. Next week is going to be pretty warm out, and it's going to be a drier pattern, it looks like, going into the future. We finally got some things starting to grow in here, and I'll make a harvest video probably middle of September, late September, around there. Our growing season here usually ends in the end of September. If we get lucky, we can go into October sometimes. We'll see how that goes. So I planted this garden the end of April inside the house, and if it were last year, I would have planted it in early May. This year was a very cold spring. I couldn't plant this until, I think we brought it out very late May. Our growing season doesn't start until June 1st, technically, and we sure needed it. This year has been a very wet year. It has been colder than normal, which I really enjoy. Has not been a hot year at all. It's been one of the coldest I've seen, and I absolutely love that. We got our time-lapse camera here, which I showed in my last update. Haven't been making updates like this like crazy because it's kind of boring. But I noticed in the past week or so, this thing really grew a lot, and every frog, if you've seen those videos, is just about a frog now. We find little teeny ones all over the yard now. The things I decided to plant outside, their growth is stunted. If you see there's slime all over there, slugs. We're right against the woods. There's an endless supply that just keep coming out. Keep coming out. They keep eating all the bait, eating all the poison. So new ones come in and they destroy the plants. See, the zucchini plant here is absolutely covered in slime from the slugs. That might be a total loss if I decide to go anywhere for more than a week or two, because they'll eat all the poison. You can't just leave a massive amount of it out because it will rot. It is basically noodles, and there's a chemical on them that only affects slugs and snails. Up here we got some asparagus, which is doing pretty well. Asparagus is in that pot, and it's also in this pot without much soil, so I can bring it in the house. Asparagus will not survive the winter in my climate for the first year. It may possibly survive when it becomes 2 or 3 years old. Asparagus, you cannot eat it until it becomes 2 or 3 years old, because look how skinny it is. You know, when you buy it at the store, it's got some good girth to it. I also use this, which seemed to take care of our rabbit and woodchuck problem indefinitely. I sprayed this. Once it dries, it's waterproof, and I'll probably do that again. I barely used any of it. I only sprayed it around these couple little spots, and it seemed to work out pretty well. Because it's been so wet for the past 2 months, I have not had to water anything, which has been awesome, because otherwise I got to come over here every single night when it's hot, pump some water, fill up the watering cans, which is not that hard at all. Everything I have which requires me to water by hand can finish it in like 10 minutes. Before I bring you guys inside the fence, right here I have some cucumber plants coming out. And here's our first one. Look how fat that is. We'll let it get a little bigger before we eat it. Hopefully nothing else gets to it. If we look along the vine, I see a couple little ones suspended on this one that's climbing. These are my sunflowers. Before they get blown over in the wind, I think I'm going to go around them with a cable attached to the fence so they can't fall over. You see, it looks like the sunflower's in there. It's going to be a while before it opens, and thankfully most of our squirrels are gone. The electric fence doesn't seem to be working, or maybe it's because I have shoes on. Anyone in the comments know? I really don't know about that one right there. I come over here to the actual solar device. and it's telling me the fence is okay despite our lack of sunshine. It's operating absolutely fine. Now, this right here, see, it's going to the fence, and this one right here is going to a rod in the ground. The idea is an animal standing on the ground, which is damp, it goes and touches that, it gets zapped. But I'm wondering, is it possible that these should be reversed? Does anyone know that? Because this one here absolutely hurts if I touch it. And I go and I get a electric meter, nothing, and that one, it's making it go off. Would switching these help? Or would it work fine if I was barefoot out here? Which I don't want to try. I'm going to bring you inside the garden now. Got the cinder block here so I can simply step over the fence. I know a deer or something could go over here very easily, but luckily we don't have deer. Not really. I've seen some on the trail cameras in the spring. They only seem to come here in the winter and defoliate some of my pine bushes. So we come in here. This right here is all marigold right here. I must have stepped on those ones when they were tiny. That's why they're not growing. Right here we got potatoes. In the fall, we'll dig up the ground and see how many we get. They look like they're doing pretty well. This is a strawberry plant which will get bigger and bigger in here every year. There's a ton of earwigs down inside there, which might be a sign I need to do another round of insecticides. I need to go around in here and I think take some of these and stuff them back in the cages a little bit better. See, that one fell over and then it started growing a little weird. See, like, I need to keep up with this. I haven't been really keeping up with these plants out here. I have some that are potted right next to the house, which I've been stuffing them in the cage almost daily, making sure they work out. Right here we got onions, which are growing pretty well. The onion's about to flower. This, I believe, is a zucchini plant, which got flowers, and it even has a little baby zucchini down there. There were originally 4 zucchini plants. I'm assuming the slugs killed the others. And I think I should put more slug poison down in here because I'm not seeing many pellets at the moment. Over here, the corn is doing very well. Out of all the corn we planted, it looks like only 3 stalks actually died out. These stalks are much taller, I think, than the ones in the back because the water table actually went up so much that this stayed flooded for a couple of days during the rain. Right here we have more, which I believe is, I thought they were cucumbers, but maybe they're zucchini because they're growing in more little bushes. These are carrots right here. I'm not gonna cut any of them because I think it'll still do good. If they're overcrowded, will that result in a mini carrot? I don't really know. I've never planted carrots before, but we'll give them another 2 months. That's what we got of growing season before we start pulling them. A seed must have accidentally landed there. That's why we have random marigolds and random plants. And here's more carrots. Over here is broccoli. I'm not sure if they're too close or not, but we'll see what ends up growing here as far as the broccoli. The lettuce seems to be actually kind of dying, I think, overwatering with it raining almost every day. To be honest, this is, I forget which is which. One of them is black Simpson seed lettuce. These are lettuces that I consider, you know, the fancy type. I honestly don't really like those. Next year I'm going to try to grow romaine and iceberg lettuce, which are my favorites. These, I don't really like the taste of them, and I even did some trimming on them, and even my tadpoles would not eat this type of lettuce. So I only grew these because it came in a kit, and I wanted to try growing lettuce. Next year I will not grow this type of lettuce, but I will definitely grow lettuce again next year. So I want to come over here, see this. I got to spend a little bit of time making sure all these are back in the cages because it'll still grow randomly on the ground, but if the tomato is on the ground, it'll start to rot. I accidentally, when I was planting, put 2 pepper plants here. One of them died and one of them's doing all right. This is a store-bought yellow tomato plant, and it looks like something has been eating it. See that? We lost a bunch of them. Something's been eating in here. So I think we definitely need to come in here with some insecticides to figure that out. You see, they're growing kind of scraggly from the lack of sun and too much rain. So as far as these are cherry tomatoes, we're starting to get a couple tiny ones. I think in another month or so, especially if it starts drying out. This timer is set to come on for, I believe, 20 minutes every day. It's not on at the moment. Maybe I should do 20 minutes every 2 days once that's required to run again. These are the big beefs. These are going to get absolutely huge, and we're starting to get some in there. These are actually growing nice. They don't look that scraggly. These are big beef again. This is looking very scraggly from lack of sun. Just hasn't been a sunny year. It's been very cloudy. Wildfire smoke, raining almost every day. Back here, these are all Morrow Globe, and we got some pretty big ones back there. Those look like they're going to do pretty well. I need to go down and do some deadheading, which it doesn't even look bad yet, which that means you pull the marigold flower off when it starts to die. You can save this right here, and it's full of seeds. Put it in a paper bag so it doesn't mold and it can dry out. Then you got a bunch of seeds for the following year on the inside there, and by removing it, a new flower will replace it pretty soon. This little planting area also did not have a great year. See, these are bell peppers. See, they're flowering. They don't look great though. My bean plant, it grew like one, or that's a pea plant, grew a couple pea pods but has died. The one over here died a while back. These pepper plants are doing bad, very bad. I don't know why. They got a lot of rain. I guess it's maybe lack of sunlight. These hot pepper plants, something's been nibbling on them. Not doing well at all. Something's been defoliating, probably the slugs. All the marigold plants. I do not expect to get any hot peppers this year out of these plants because of this. Once again, I'm assuming this is because of too much rain that this plant is doing so bad, and there's some sort of weird caterpillar in there. What is on that caterpillar? Is that how it's supposed to look? Just some weird caterpillar? I know sometimes flies and bees will lay eggs on a caterpillar, and when they hatch, they eat it. Well, this was a blackberry plant, and it doesn't look like we'll get much out of it. Is that weather related or bug related? I'm not sure. The rhubarb looks decent, but it also looks like it's drowning a little bit from too much rain. But I think it'll do okay. This little tomato plant's not doing well at all. This tomato plant here looks like it's doing decent, and we might get something out of it. This is actually very beefy, the stalk on this one. And I do see some damage. It looks like slugs maybe have been doing something. Over here we got some mint, which is doing okay. These are very stunted. They have not grown at all noticeably in the past month. I don't know what those are. Maybe pumpkins, watermelon, zucchini. It could be anything like that. There was so much lettuce in here from just throwing all my extra seeds. The slugs have killed it all. This is another mint plant. That mint plant was big, completely defoliated by slugs, and now it's starting to come back up. Back there, you can see a tiny frog hopping away. This one was also completely defoliated by the slugs. Mint is a good deterrent for insects, but a slug is not an insect. Something's been eating little holes in this, but it doesn't seem to be damaging them that severely. This is a little potato patch. Back here, most of the stuff has also been killed by the slugs. Over here is my blueberry bush. I have about a half a dozen of them on the property, and they grow really big ones like that, nice and ripe now. We usually get like a 5-gallon bucket out of them. I sprayed them this year because if you don't, every single one gets a little hole in it. Technically, you can still eat it with the maggot inside it, but the fruit flies are kind of gross. And we also have, this is an invasive Japanese beetle, which likes to destroy a lot of the blueberry bushes. And it also likes to destroy certain trees. And it likes to destroy raspberries. Back behind here is a gigantic raspberry patch. As you see, we got a couple of them in here that look like they might be worth eating. But we are fighting bugs and slugs because I'm not throwing any kind of chemicals out. That's good to eat. There was an ant on there though eating it. Sometimes the turkeys come through here and they'll go in here and pick everything. This is the raspberry patch. This over here is my black raspberry patch. Also, doesn't seem to be having a great year, but maybe now that the weather's starting to get drier, these will actually be able to develop. Huge black raspberry patch, and there's some daylilies in there. This part of the yard is so wet that I actually got my socks wet. See, it's always marshy here, especially this time of year, to the point that water irises can actually survive. I'm just noticing these pots must really be waterlogged. There's a constant stream of water coming out, enough to build up that layer of slime. Around the frog pond, we have a bunch of berries we can also pick. Berries, when you live in the middle of nowhere where people aren't using chemicals that kill everything but grass, you know, you got everything out here. Wild strawberries absolutely everywhere. And if you don't mow an area, it turns into blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, black raspberries quite fast without the chemicals preventing it. Over here, I know I've been neglecting this, but look, see? More of these invasive beetles, Japanese beetles. They like to destroy these plants. Although, they don't seem to actually go after the fruit. It seems to be just the leaves. Down here is a tiny blueberry bush. This is wild blueberry. These will stay absolutely tiny like this. They don't get any bigger, but they sure are sweet compared to the other one over there. I showed you the actual big, I don't know what you'd call it, but does better right here. That looks like an actual ladybug. Usually we just see Asian lady beetles, but that looks like an actual ladybug right there. The shape of it. In here, I recently mowed a trail so I could get into the middle of this giant bush. This is underneath my power lines. So last year, actually now 3 years ago, I must have cut down 40 of these trees that were dying, and they're flimsy. They always fall over to make sure they wouldn't fall on the power lines. Now 3 years later, the trees are growing in pretty well. A lot of the trees around here are already over 20 feet tall in just a couple of years, filling in immediately after cutting down the dead trees. And we're left with so many berry bushes in here now. It's amazing. If I want blueberries, I have an unlimited supply if I walk along the highway. I'm sure you can hear it in the background. I also grew these flowers from seed back in the spring. They're finally starting to bloom, which is beautiful. With our short growing season, I don't know how tall they'll get, but when I used to live in Massachusetts, these will just keep blooming all summer long. And I'm not sure what these are. These are bulbs. They're not perennials. I bought them from the Dollar Tree. Don't know when they'll flower, though. And this, I don't even remember planting that. Oh, that's what happened. I had a bunch of seed pods that didn't sprout, and I opened them and just threw all the dirt in here. Those seeds must have been late, so that's probably zucchini. Right along my back door, this is a store-bought plant I bought back in April. I had to keep it in the house for over a month before eventually putting it out here. This one's doing the best. I think it's because it's got so much sun. Look at the amount of them on here. This is a store-bought one. Say in a few weeks, I'm gonna have dozens off of each of these plants, and the other one's up here. And I'd say this one got just as many. It looks like my Japanese maple tree's doing good. It's grown over a foot since I purchased it. Catmint down there doesn't seem to be doing well. It likes a lot of sun. Today, look at the sun's finally coming out. Cattails are doing good. I don't know if they'll actually grow cattails. This water's nice and clean. All the frogs and tadpoles are completely gone now. They left. They were mostly wood frogs, which are more like a toad, so they just hopped off into the woods. This hose right here has a reducing valve so it doesn't come out blasting. It's on a 200-minute timer every 3 days just to completely flush the water out really slow. It's going slow so the tadpoles wouldn't get swept out while it was slowly flushing it. I think I'm going to keep the timer going, but I may reduce it back to like 30 minutes. We don't need to do a complete water change anymore because barely anything's living in there except this one. It looks like a green frog that just randomly showed up here to this pond. This little pond over here became a dead area. I'm thinking because it's not black. I think the silver here made it so animals were able to easily pick it off, and that looks like maybe toxic algae. That's why it's red. This pond will not be a thing next year. It might be just a watering hole for animals. I'll throw it in the woods, but I'm gonna dump its contents out at the end of the year. I think next year I'll put another black basin here, which seems to work better. I still am not sure what causes these leaves to shrivel and curl up. This plant does not expand for some reason, but this is my only actual blackberry plant. The rest were black raspberry. Real raspberry, when these things ripen up, they'll be almost 2 inches long. They're absolutely huge. I love this plant, and it doesn't seem to be spreading around, although I wish it would. The raspberries are pretty invasive. So now, if we go beyond the garden, I want to show you how raspberries take over clearings. This past winter, we had over 50 trees fall down out here in the woods, and I cut down most of them. This area here used to be woods before a whole bunch of trees had fallen down. Now it's turning into goldenrod. A bunch of seedlings are quickly growing back. We got a bunch of maple, a bunch of those are balsam firs growing back. But a lot of the areas out here, it's turning to berry bushes until the trees shade them out enough where they'll start dying. All these stacks right here, it's been a wet year. Firewood is not seasoning as fast as it did last year. That was the only benefit of the drought. These would have been ready to burn this season, but because these are still pretty green, maybe next year I'll start hauling them back to the house and splitting them. The grass is growing pretty nice in there. See berry bushes. Everything is bright green this year from the surplus of rain. Birds have never used these. I predicted this giant white pine was going to die. But with all the rain, it's staying green despite the entire top being missing. If you have a lot of good rainy years, these white pines can regrow themselves enough where breaking off the top won't kill them. But if you have a really dry year, they don't have the energy to repair themselves. This year, I do not see ourselves going into a drought. July is almost over, which is our hottest month here in northern New England. I got a trail camera set up there. This stuff appears to be waterproof. It rained a ton since I applied this 2 days ago. Let me smell it. Still smells sweet. This is sweet corn spray. It's supposed to attract animals. I just wanted to see what it would attract. I sprayed it all over this bridge. This little trickling stream usually doesn't even flow except the spring thaw. It's been flowing all summer because it's been raining so much. Sometimes to the point, this whole area is just flooding with water going through. I originally dug this little trench because, see how it's wide and swampy? That went all the way through. I dug a little trench so I could dry out enough for the bridge supports, and it just opens back up. That eventually meets up with the highway pit. This right here was for the tree frogs because if it wasn't for this year being very wet, this usually dries up, and tree frogs lay eggs in there. If I found any eggs, I would have moved them to this pond so they'd be okay. When sun shines in here, this will turn on the pump to keep the water circulating. And look, there's a couple frogs in here. I never stocked this pond. I never put eggs or tadpoles in here one bit. These frogs just randomly showed up to make it their home. I made these big piles of dirt for animals can easily go up to it. As the trail camera has showed, raccoons come up here to take baths, drink, wash their hands. We've got bears, moose, deer, turkeys, a bunch of things drinking from this little pool. It brings a lot of life. We got these ladders in case the water's low, in case I wasn't here for a hot stretch of weather and it reduced. Things like mice and squirrels won't get trapped and drown. Anything can leave the pond. We always put ladders even on the smallest bird bath in the yard. Reason I didn't stock this is because it's shady, cold. Frogs wouldn't develop well in here. Without the sun, it doesn't produce enough food to survive a good amount of tadpoles, for them to eat. Without the heat of the sun, they would develop very slowly, which I thought was cruel. The ponds that were in the bright sun, they develop so fast. My massive deep pond, they're a bit slower because it takes a while to heat up a very deep pond, which is about 4 feet deep. I did that intentionally so it couldn't freeze solid and fish actually survive the winter. There's a bunch of tadpoles in there. I think frogs showed up themselves after I stocked it, and they laid more eggs, so I think there's another round of them going on. That's why we still have hundreds that haven't developed one bit. I think it's a different type of frog even. That was not put there by me. The frog just showed up to lay eggs. And if they're in there, sometimes if they're laid late in the year or it's too cold, a tadpole can stay a tadpole for multiple years. And I'm wondering if there's a good amount of them in that pond, because a tadpole's not going to hibernate. It's more like a fish. Will they create too much CO2 and kill everything underneath the ice? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. This right here is a peach tree I bought a year ago. It died. And I threw it in here, and it actually turned into a giant moss ball. I thought it may have done that. I wasn't very confident, but it actually turned into a big moss ball, which is definitely helping purify the water. I see a good amount of mosquito larvae in there right now, but I also see a couple water skimmers, which will eat them. Water skimmers will actually even kill mosquitoes when they're not hungry, just because they don't like them. And it's a bunch of little teeny green frogs. If we continue down here, see, we still have a big mess. I just got lazy. I got tired of cleaning up the trees. It got tiresome after a while. Out here, whole bunch of area. I cleared this with a couple of friends. Stacked it. This can all be brought back to the house. Stacking it went pretty well. Only a couple of the piles fell over because we were stacking it in deep snow at that time. I like working in the winter when it's nice and cold. And then all the brush, just like grated it with a chainsaw. Now there's a bunch of empty patches. You can already see little seedlings and stuff popping through. This will be overgrown in no time. Just like over there, looks like a blowdown maybe half a decade ago. Already covered in tiny little trees, growing in, looking nice. The rain has helped the forest so much, but I gotta say, probably not so much the vegetable garden. It looks like it's struggling and starting to turn yellow because of all the rain. Hopefully this week will save the garden. It's supposed to be very nice out, and this week it'll probably require a watering, and that's when I will apply some additional pesticides to help the plants that look like they're getting eaten. Here's a chair I threw out here about a year ago. It's doing exactly what I want. It's starting to turn green. See the moss growing on it? Hoping that whole chair is green pretty soon. And I hope today's video was interesting, everybody. Thanks for watching and have a great day.